Thanks for sponsoring, and thanks everybody for coming out. Online people, can you hear me all right? Take silence as a yes.
Yes.
Sweet.
You're audible.
Yes.
Great. Thanks. I'll go a little bit deeper about
It's a little
myself,
bro-
just
it's a
in
little
case you
broken up.
haven't heard.
It's a little
Oh,
broken up.
sorry.
It's a little broken up, but yes, we can hear you directly.
Okay. I'll try to look down a little more when I'm talking to try to talk into there. I'll go ahead and introduce myself a little bit more in depth than I normally do, just so you guys can know me a little better. And feel free to reach out if there's anything I can help with or just being more involved in the group. I actually work for a company called Lean Techniques. It's a consultancy up in Des Moines. Do a little bit of everything. I'm actually moving into a role to help a client with AI initiatives. So they have a high-level AI on their roadmap. Don't really know what that means. They know there's potentially some data exfil happening with other people going off and trying to do AI things with tools off the shelf. So they kind of want to learn as an organization a little bit more about AI, how to do it safely, how to experiment, and how to bring up the talent at their organization to be able to talk about AI. I think right before this, we were kind of talking, pretty much anything Microsoft these days has AI in it some way, shape, or form. So there's a lot of fatigue around it. Some people don't even know what it can do. Some people think it can do these other things. Some people think it's going to take our jobs. Some people just think it's a bubble ready to burst. So I think it's cool to let people know and help teach them kind of what AI can do, what different things in Azure can do, and then bridge that gap. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I run with a co-organizer and my podcast host, Brian Gorman, who's an MCT, Azure Cloud Workshops. So Microsoft used to have Microsoft Cloud Workshops, which sometimes would cost you a lot of money to run, where you'd spend things of having like geo-dispersed databases if you're just trying to do like a Cosmos 101. So our goal with that is to try to help people learn Azure, be very upfront if or when things are going to cost money, and try to make it as easy and seamless as possible so you can go ahead and learn safely and not get a huge Azure bill by doing that. I'm also the co-organizer of the Iowa Microsoft Azure User Group and the Kansas City Azure User Group. We've kind of combined those for the most part. They're mostly online. As I was talking with Vabob, we did a in-person hybrid event with here and Des Moines. We're hoping to grow and to get an in-person presence in Kansas City as well. If you need to email me, have any questions, comments, concerns, it's my personal email, private. You can find me on LinkedIn. I respond to messages and connections there pretty actively. The QR code is to my podcast, and it's a picture of my dogs. The Australian Shepherd is Augie, and our mutt is Finn. He's a rescue. We don't really know what he is, but he's awesome. And then my wife, Saffron. So this is going to be a little bit more laid back of a talk than I normally do. So feel free to interrupt, have questions, do whatever. But what kind of sparked it with me was I was working with a client and they were trying to do dubbing videos in Azure. So that kind of led me down the path of what all services are out there, how hard is it to really dub a video, right? You just think, okay, I'll just take it from English, for example, and then I can shoot it out all over and it'll be in whatever language I need. It actually helped introduce a lot of nuance to those problems. So we'll talk about it a little more with Azure Speech, but you can just completely import and export a video in a different language. However, you run into issues like if you use Spanish, for example, the English video and the Spanish video, about the same length. However, you have the pain point of they're not quite lined up the same. And then if you use a language like Dutch, for example, they just don't line up at all. The Dutch audio, I think, was like 30 seconds when the English and Spanish were like 2 minutes and 50 seconds. So like very concise language. I don't know if it's saying the same thing, but I can guarantee you it's not lined up when there's basically a minute of video with nothing. So thinking about that, thinking about languages, kind of ran into Charles Elwood. He gave a talk on how AI's role in empowering communities and preserving culture. It's a cool TED talk. I just realized my screen isn't changing. Let me get out of present mode. There we go. So Charles did a TED talk on how AI can help preserve cultures, languages, and help give voice to people who traditionally may not have it. So one of his examples was somebody who was born without the ability to speak, but could do sign language and had to do their own version of sign language. And they could actually do speech on the edge so that they could sign to a camera. And then that person then could communicate, because then they would take the computer vision, use speech services, and then output audio at the end. So they could speak as if their mom was speaking, was the voice they used. Another example they used that was really cool was a radio broadcaster who had throat cancer. And, you know, that's their whole career. And he just basically wrote a video or filmed a video for his family as like, this is my final goodbye, because I'm not going to be able to talk after this surgery. And with actually AI services, they could actually replicate his voice and be able to emulate his voice. So now he's still able to speak with typing, texting, all that, and it'll output in his custom trained voice. So I thought that was a really cool spin on AI. Some people try to talk about it of like impersonating or being super scary. I think there's positive notes of accessibility and things that can really help and do that to empower people who normally would just be, you know, kind of left in our societies. I think the phrase he used, you know, if you can't talk, it's hard to get around or navigate. There is some things to make it easier, but just think about how many things in your day-to-day life that if you couldn't even speak anymore, how difficult life would be. So for this talk, I just figured we'd go over kind of the high-level speech services, what they can do, what seems to be on the horizon, and just go over some of those. Any questions, comments before we start? What's up? Increase the font? Yeah. So, that better? Cool. So this is a speech service in Azure. Raise your hand. We're good? Okay. So this is just a generic speech service in Azure. It created, Microsoft is moving a lot of their Azure resources into kind of a studio format. The fancy way of saying, instead of being in the Azure portal, it kind of takes you to another landing space where there's more, I would say UI and UX than the typical Azure resources. We're seeing that a lot with like OpenAI Studio. We're seeing that with AI Studio. We're seeing that with Azure Speech Service. So we're moving to more of a like enablement kind of platform. So if you create just a generic speech service, here's kind of what you'll see. You have your resource group, the region. We're specifically going to be in West US 2. That's for a specific example we're going to have a little bit later. And we can go to the studio. So I can click it here. I have it open already. This is what you're greeted with when you first load up an Azure Speech Service. You kind of have your first handful of different capabilities. And some of these are in preview, so that means they are able to change. But we'll go ahead and start with kind of the first one. So in the case of first translating a video, we need to first understand what is being said before we know how to translate it. That's kind of where the captioning service comes into play. Captioning is also really cool. I talked to a user group in another country. They were talking about how they tried to do their best to have live captioning because they were, I believe they're in Sweden, but a lot of their speakers are in English. A lot of their membership speaks English, but also they want to have more accessibility. So they're doing their best to try to do live captioning. So in Azure Speech, you kind of have two different options if you want to try to hit that and get more accessibility. You have your real-time captioning, which we can play this and kind of see what that looks like.
You want to get a good voice, it's better to have good data. So accumulate data, you also keep that more.
So if you noticed, one drawback of live voice is it is slightly delayed. So if you're trying to see a speaker, see the voice, see the audio, see the lips move, it's going to be slightly delayed if you're going to be using live text translation. So it is cool and it's really awesome and allows for more accessibility. In a format like this, it's something we would need to use. But if you have offline capability or know there's going to be something that you're going to do after the fact, you can also do. And if you notice, those captions were immediate. So we can go ahead and play that again. And the reason for that is there's just a slight delay of it's basically behind the scenes making an API call out, analyzing what voice is being said and shooting it back, which is kind of crazy if you think about how much technology and compute goes into that. for the real time that it's only delayed a couple seconds. There's also ways you can do that to get a little bit closer to real time. This just being a demo, obviously, it's going to be a little bit more delayed because they don't want to put as much compute and whatnot behind it as they can. But for videos that you're using on other platforms, you can do offline captioning as well. And a lot of these, we can do the SRT file. So an SRT is kind of a format they use in teleprompters. That's the word I'm looking for. So this is going to give you kind of your timestamps of what's said in what time frame. So if you're looking to dub a video, this is going to be crucial for you if you want to line up the audio with a translated language. Where this helps is for pacing, so you can at least know if a speaker's on screen speaking, maybe you're not doing the machine learning craziness of like changing their lips or whatnot yet, but you can at least have pacing correct. So whether that I can have somebody say, welcome back to Azure Cosmos DB Essentials, whatever that language is, if it's more verbose or less verbose than English, I can at least speed up the speaker, slow down the speaker so it's hitting at the same time. It's not the best, but it gets you closer to that truly dubbed experience of its pacing is going to at least be similar. And then there's also code samples here. So you have your few languages that you can do it in. A lot of these services are RESTful APIs. So if you're comfortable building an API, you can go ahead and go out and just build it yourself. There is SDKs though for particular languages. So if you're using a lot of the big ones, minus say the big ones at this point, you're probably going to hit up a good chunk of the pools of people. And then there's also some getting started. There's related services and pricing. You'll see this is pretty common. I can blow this up a little more. This is going to be pretty common with all of our things we're going to be talking about. They all have this little section down here. And it's also going to tell you about responsible use of AI. So that's captioning as a service. Any questions, comments? It's a separate studio on its own today. I think it's under the AI. So there's now an umbrella of AI services. I think it's under the AI service umbrella, but it's its own standalone studio. So I believe for the captioning, it's looking at the audio and then it's doing that to analyze the input. So you'd have to give it access to the live stream. If we go down here, I believe we can find. So this is outputting it in the sections. And then where is it? Adust real time. So it's first taking it in right here. Sorry, I'm trying to find where exactly it's doing it. It's the end of the timestamp. Just real time, enable. Oh, this is the offline one. I believe you do, it's a stream, if I recall correctly. It's showing the offline and the real time, which is not the best. We do not save, recognize result. So, yeah. So it goes through and it'll recognize the audio source and then it'll take that. So you can stream it in from a real-time stream or you can stream it in from a fixed video. We can also drop it in if you want to try it out yourself, I believe. Yeah. So we can watch it, do it in real time if you want to. I have a video on my desktop. That is the question. I don't think so. Maybe. So this is a TikTok I made for my wife. She runs a floral business. Let's see if it. And you can see it's a little bit delayed, but given access to it, it'll start outputting. And then you can do that in any sort of video format, file format. And then I think you can actually use real streams behind the scene if you want to do more real time of like a live feed. And then we can do things like the partial threshold. So you can have it go quicker if you want the response to be quicker. The AI itself is going to be quicker as far as determining. So if you notice, it did 16 countries, which wasn't the right word, but because we're right in the middle, it's trying to leverage how accurate is the AI speech to text versus how fast are you getting the results back. And then you can also caption stuff differently. We could do offline here. We could change languages if we wanted to try to detect a different language. And then we can also change. We could just say, I don't know the link. I think that's a different service. We're getting there. I don't think in this particular view it does. Let's see. Let's try Italian, maybe. It looks like it just doesn't do anything. Oh, dreams away. So if we turned it back to language identification, it looks like it does stuff, but I don't think it does. Yeah. Yep. No. We'll get to there is one that does speech translation or text to speech, speech to speech. We'll get there. I don't think in this particular blade or view, I don't know what they call these in Azure. I probably should. In the portal, they call them blades. I don't know what they call them here. We'll get there though. We do have a speech to speech when we're talking about the videos and whatnot. We also have post-call transcription and analytics. This is actually a pretty cool tool if you think of like a call center, and it by default will help obfuscate some of the PII. So if your goal is to just see, hey, everybody who calls Jen at my call center, she always has like a high satisfaction score, but everybody who calls Joe over here never does. What's the difference? Is it because they came in angry more often when they talk to Joe? Is it because Jen is just better at doing stuff? Maybe she just cues up a conversation differently. You could start pulling those analytics and seeing even phrase by phrase where it thinks the sentiment is. So if you notice, we have the two different speakers. We think that the first one is positive, so we can play a little bit of this. So if you notice that it actually pulled out some of these, we can actually show the PII if we want to. But if you are a consumer of this data downstream and you're under jurisdiction from, say, like your security team, it's easier to say, hey, people upstream, just don't give me PII. Then I don't need to worry about obfuscating PII or telling the security folks how I'm hiding PII. Be like, I just never got it. It's the easiest way to solve that. The security team's happy. You're happy because you don't have to do reports about how you're not going to lose PII or it's going to get stolen. You just say, we don't have it, we can't lose it. So it's a pretty cool tool in that regard. They have a few different examples. So they have single channel audio, they have dual channel, and then a different one that's also dual channel for refilling a prescription. And different frustrations. We can also key in different sections if you want to go through. But again, similar to the one previously, we do have a very similar getting started section in our same languages. All these are hosted on GitHub. There's even more examples on GitHub. And then again, we have the same thing down below of the getting started, the pricing calculator, how all that works. We can also do a call summary. So these are all the different ones. This one's particularly for the prescription one of customer called about a refill, help the customer fill the prescription, inform the customer that prepaid prescription was canceled. So if you're also just trying to get a high level stuff of maybe a sense of what's going on, you could also try to output that too. Again, then you're obfuscated from the PII. If you're trying to manage multiple people in a call center, or if you're trying to manage multiple different things, this doesn't even need to be a call center. It could be multiple Teams messages, right? Like Maybe your direct reports send you team messages and you want to know, you have so many people that it's worth it for you to build some sort of bot to analyze which one of your team members are giving you positive messages, which ones are frustrated, so you can prioritize your time accordingly. There's a bunch of different use cases you could do for this, but then it gives you a summary too. So you could get like a post-meeting summary. You could feed other things through this and try to get summaries out of it. And that's going to be the transcription and analytics. Any questions, comments? What's up? Mm-hmm.
If I have a standard,
Mm-hmm.
I can make it under captions to be added to the video.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think I can download output video with the captions?
Yeah, so you can actually, with the captions.
No, I was thinking standard video.
So one thing I've done is on Microsoft Stream, and I think Vimeo supports this, that SRT file I showed you, a lot of video platforms will allow you to upload SRT files. So you can take that file and then it's smart enough behind the scenes to say, here's the timestamp of when the caption starts, and it'll play it back. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. I would imagine, because I think Teams had it before speech did. So I'm wondering if they tried to. Yeah, I don't know if they used the Teams technology or maybe vice versa. But yeah, because Teams, you can do real-time capturing. The cool part about the media too is if you can't get full dubbing, if you use like Microsoft Stream, for example, it'll go to the locale of the person who's listening. So whatever the default locale is. So if you export, that SRT, you then could make it more accessible to them. They may not understand exactly like the words being said, but they could see like the things happening, or if it's a training video, right, the training concepts. But yeah. Any other questions? Cool. We'll keep it rolling. I'm going to come back to the live chat avatar. I think that one's pretty cool. We can also do real-time speech to text. So that's kind of what we were talking about of I could talk to this, it'll transcribe it in real time. You have your whisper model, which is, again, using Azure OpenAI to transcribe it. So you can actually talk to Azure OpenAI now with the speech service. So you could, assuming you have access to the whisper, you could talk to it. So your AI model then is even more accessible because you can type to it, you can talk to it, it can talk back to you, it can speak to you. Custom speech is really cool. I will tell you, I've never racked up a multiple $1,000 bill in Azure except once, and it was with a custom speech and custom voice. It costs, I think, there's two different ways to do a custom speech, and we can jump into here. So you can train by audio files, or it'll give you script prompting to train on your voice. There's a quick train model, which takes, I think, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours to train. You have to say, I think, like 30 different sentences, and then you can talk in your voice by just typing and hitting export. And it's super cool. The basic model comes out like this. You don't have any sort of emotion. It sounds very robotic. There is a more advanced model where we'll show when we do the avatar, you can put in different, like, I call them kind of like HTML tags. You can put like happy, excited, sad. And it's super cool. Very similar to the AI model we're going to use for the speech later. And you can do that. But that one takes a minimum of 24 hours of training. And then a custom voice model takes, I think it was $3. It was $3 or $5 per hour to host. And to have it, period, you have to host it. So you can do the math. How many hours are in a month? It adds up real quick. What's that? Yes. It ends up being about, I think, $3,000 a month. Learn that the hard way. Microsoft is awesome. And if you don't do that a lot and you say, hey, I'm so sorry, I learned something, they reversed it before it charged my card, which was really cool of them. But I've been told in the custom voice modeling world, that is a pretty good deal. But again, that's not my background, so I can't speak to that. So it costs, I think, around $3,000 to host that. There's scripts that they'll take you through, and then there's also, you can just upload audio files too. So that's what they used in one of the examples of Charles's session he had of, it was a guy talking, he was a radio host. They found files from there. They found files of his video of like basically telling his family goodbye with his voice. They spliced them all together, and the model had enough data to then replicate his voice. Yeah. So there's only one, I think there's free and then there's S0 right now. So there's only two you can have. We're in West US 2 because that's the only one that supports avatars other than I think Europe, and I think there's one in Asia that does as well. It's homework for you. They don't really tell you up front. So you have to go in and if we go to, for example, what did I just do? Oh, I think. Yeah. So there's that. You can set cost alerts. You can set cost budgets to turn off. I'm on a Visual Studio Enterprise plan for this one specifically. So when I run out of money, it just turns off. That's one thing that, so if you have a Visual Studio Enterprise subscription, you can do that. I think it's $150 a month that just auto refreshes. So if you run out, it doesn't need a credit card. It just kills everything. So that's a good way to, if your company uses Visual Studio, a good way to start experimenting with Azure if you're lucky enough. That way you can, have that $150 a month. If you blow through it quickly, who cares? Like, you just get next month and you make sure to kill everything that was charging you money. There's the Azure pricing calculator. So this is the more in-depth for speech. There's the pricing calculator you can go through and start putting in like actual numbers of, I'm planning on using this much of this much of this, and it'll spit out a number at the end. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the speech to text specifically. You get 5 audio hours for free. Speech translation, again, 5 audio hours for free. Speak verification. I believe so. I believe so. I don't know if that means it's going to charge you each language you kick it out, or if it's like I scanned it. So like if I have a video that's say 1 hour long, if I then kick it out in 5 different languages, I don't know if that counts as my 5 audio hours because this is a good point. I'm not 100% sure because text to speech, well, I guess that's rated on characters. So maybe it is. This one? If you're standard, it goes to a per hour basis of real time. Yes, every time you run it, it would charge you. So it's a free service until you run it. It's a consumption model. Yeah. Yep. And they charge you more on a real-time basis. So that's one thing I did forget is the real-time transcriptions and everything does cost more than offline. So if you can get away with doing offline, it would be more cost advantageous to do an offline translation because then you have it, you can show it in real time when they replay the video, but it'll be cheaper for you when you use it. Here's a little bit deeper dive into that. Speaker recognition is going to be $5 per 1,000. I think, do we have the transcription? I don't think it does, maybe. Conversational transcription, multi-channel audio. So I guess this is in preview though, so that's not what we just looked at. This one they were. So yeah, it would be the piece that you have to wire it to Azure Speech, right? So it wouldn't like it doesn't go directly, I think, to a phone number. So you would have to be in charge of how do you take that phone call and then send it off. So you could do that, turn it on and off of setting alerts or turning things on and off on your end. You could also potentially, I don't know, if not monitor as many, or you could try to find bright spots in the conversation. So like I think of like a call that's on hold forever. Maybe you don't want to submit that if you know they're sitting on hold. Yeah. Yeah. So that's where it's up to you to implement that piece of it. Unfortunately, they don't. It doesn't look super clear as far as that goes. Well, and that's why talk to a sales rep specialist is one of the main buttons when you hit pricing too. So you can talk to Microsoft. A lot of companies have reps you could probably talk to, and they could get you to somebody who might have a clearer answer. But yeah. So we did that. Speech translation is pretty cool. This was kind of the first sample I went to with a video. Oops, don't want to actually do that. So you can browse audio files. It says audio files, but it does support MP3s and MP4s. So technically it does support video files as well. Let's just do this one again. So we can see that's the original text. And if we go chosen spoken language, I guess it would help if I did this. I'm telling it to translate English into English, which doesn't really help. So now I'm telling it well, here, did that backwards. It's going to come in as English, US, and we're going to pick French. And then I can also speak out the translation. So there's different voices too that we can play with that are pre-trained. So let's do the same thing again. I didn't want to talk to it. And then if I hit play, or sometimes it plays on its own. That's not what I wanted. This one.
C'est le pays qui enchasse un regard déroulé avec mes rêves au coucher du soleil d'été par une nuit sur une longue route.
I don't speak French, but I assume that's right. And that's where you can see the pacing difference, right? When you're if you try to take that audio, put it to the video. If we listen to the original, there's that pause and breath where is in the AI. It just keeps going and going. So sometimes it gets really condensed and it's not quite the same pacing when you change languages. So that's where the SRT file can come into play and be helpful. Yeah. No. Well, so right, it's just grabbing the audio. So or sorry, just grabbing the speech, yeah. So it doesn't know anything about the music or any of that. It just apparently just zones that out as white noise. I assume there's probably words in here that don't quite come across right, because I'm wondering if the beat or something hits just right, that it might distort what it's hearing. So that could also be another thing. I don't think so. Mhm. Yeah. It would have the words. Yeah. It'd be cool. I don't think we can quite do that today though. Um, and then there's also some others. So you can type, I think it's here. Maybe not. So this one is actually a CLI command too. So if you want to output custom voices, you can do that. You can do a text to speech of, here's the text I want it to speak. You could also have it, oh, that's really cool, emulate people's voices. So like when we did here, we, for example, used Denise of this one, but if you have your own custom trained voice, you could specify that. So one cool thing we talked about is like if an executive is giving a keynote or something for your entire company, you could potentially pre-train it on their voice. You'd have to do a little bit of mapping to try to get it back, but theoretically you could try to take their voice, speak different languages, so then your people could hear basically their voice in their language. I don't know how fine-tuned that is or how well it works across languages, but it's a cool pie in the sky idea of that one of my clients is potentially looking into, is to see how they do that. Um, explicit language. That's a good question. It tunes out PII. I'm just trying to think with responsible AI if it would let you do. So today, if you do things that are harmful, hateful, any of that with like Azure OpenAI, it'll actually flag it and not return it back. So I don't know if that would do the same in speech or not. Don't know if I want to try out. I just don't want to get my stuff turned off. And then it also show you the JSON. Let me see, is there a, here's the sample. Can I mask? Oh, I didn't mean to turn my camera on. What is going on? I was gonna see if the CLI documentation had anything on the masking explicit. That's a good question. I might have to get back to you on that one. So we have that, we have a voice. We can do custom voices, we can batch it, we can do singular. We can do pronunciation assessments too. So if we want to do that, of if you're trying to learn a new language or help people pronunciate things better, we can do that here. We have the text to speech with personal voice, the audio content creation. This is where you can start getting into, if we go to here, this is the voice galleries I was talking about earlier, of where we can say, here's all the different voices we can play with.
Here's some possible slogans for a school.
So different voices are multilingual. So some of them speak multiple languages, some of them do not. So we can go through and you can pick any of these, assuming they have your language support. So again, if you're trying to make training content or whatnot, you could potentially use one of these voices. Then it's the same voice speaking to all of your audiences. So it feels more accessible. And it, yes, yep. So you have a bunch of different ones, male and female both, different types of English or different types of languages. There's a lot of them. There's even more if you're only worried about text. For example, I think Sci-Fi DevCon, I'm giving a talk on how to speak Klingon because there's two different dialects of Klingon in here for some reason. So if you do text-to-text translation, there's even more options. There's a little bit less on speech, but there's more coming. So if your language or dialect isn't in here, keep an eye out because it seems to be growing. I think when I first looked at this, there was 5 or 10, and now we're up to all of these. So don't be discouraged. If you need a different one, just make sure you check it out. They're adding more every day. Let me check. It doesn't look like it. Yeah. It is in the text-to-text translation. So we have that. We have the audio content creation is another one. We have personal voice and custom voice. That requires me to create a custom voice. So then we have, you brought up Siri. There is a kind of Siri-esque section of this. There's the custom keyword and custom commands voice assistant section. So if you want to build your own Teams plugin or something like that, there is some capabilities there as well to help you do that, where you can do keywords to kind of trigger different routines or trigger different things. Maybe at a call center, you could trigger it to, not here anymore, but trigger the recording of like maybe you have a very unruly customer or a very pleasant customer that, or when you talk, maybe there's a phrase your call center people say to trigger that. Then we have text-to-speech avatar, and then we also have the live chat avatar. So in the same way there's real-time translation and offline translation, we can do the same with avatars. So we'll start with first the live chat avatar. There is one person today, and they aren't a real person, which is a little unsettling. Of like, this person has never existed, they're not real, but we can go ahead and hit.
What are the differences between Surface Pro and Surface Go product lines?
The Surface Pro is more powerful with a larger display, while the Surface Go is smaller, more portable, and has a lower price point.
So you'll notice that this would be the real-time kind of translation. There's that still that our real-time avatar. There's that delay of it needs to analyze what you're saying. It needs to then go and grab it using probably something like Azure OpenAI or something like that behind the scenes. And then it'll bring the model and generate the avatar on the front end for you. This is cool with this way. If we do try our own, this is real time. So we can ask it things like, what can you do?
I can assist you with tasks, answer your questions, provide information, set reminders, and more.
And
How can I help you today?
There's different speaking styles we can do. So we can pick like all the different ones we want.
This process
Actually, to the crowd, and then you would.
So we could have it speak in a different person's voice, different that. We can have different conversation styles. There's even more if we go to the offline one. So that is all intended to be real time, right? Like I'm talking to somebody in real time. There's an offline version, which is the text-to-speech avatar. This gets even a little weirder because you can pick different kind of poses, different languages, different voices. So we could do extract the voice out. Yeah. So we can do that. Let's go to. It outputs. So I was going to do this. I was going to try to steal this image. Make sure I get back to the right one. So I can do this. Let's upload an image. Oh, what did I just name it as? There it is. So I can do a custom background and say like, hello. How do I do? So I can insert a gesture, which is, so I can say hello. There's wave. I thought there was a wave. Weird. I swear there was a wave. Maybe it's a different. Do not all the avatars have the same gestures? Oh, they don't. Okay. Good to know. Azure user group. So I can do this and hit play.
Hello. Please join the Omaha Azure user group.
So that's the voice. Whoop. And then I can preview the video. Maybe. There we go.
Hello. Please join the Omaha Azure user group.
So you can use any of the voices. We can then export it into our file format of choice. So we can do WebM, MP4, or a MOV, and then not this studio. The other one is more real time. So there is a real time version. It's just a little bit more delayed. Yep. So yeah, that's what this other one is. So we can go back. If I do the live chat avatar, I can try it with my own. Let's let it load. Can you answer questions in real time?
Yes, I can answer questions in real time. Sure. What questions do you have?
Not what does anybody have a question? How does pricing work for Azure Speech Service?
The pricing for Azure Speech Service depends on the type of service you choose, such as speech to text, text to speech, or speech translation. There are also different pricing tiers based on the number of transactions and the quality of the service. You can find more information about pricing on the Azure Speech Service website.
And then the warning at the bottom. This is an image. This input, image and video are generated by AI. It's not a real person, which is kind of weird. And then it looks like we can also make it multi-language as well. So, yeah. If you wanted to, Vabob, to pay for it, you could have this stream the avatar the whole time, and it could be in the corner just talking, or at least yeah, just type out an entire talk, and then she'll just be in the corner of the video the whole time. Yeah. But yeah, this is only available in West US 2, the avatar portion specifically. So it's newer and kind of cool. Yeah. There's different conversation styles we can do too. It looks like this is very similar to how you have system messaging in Azure OpenAI as well. So you can give it kind of some system prompts of different ways to talk to be more casual, more simple, more professional. But yeah, any other questions? That's kind of all I got for this presentation. Cool. Depends on the service. Some of them are, I would say, are production ready. They're ready to go. Some of them are in preview, in public preview, so you can go and use them, but that means they still might change. But different pieces are at different stages. Yep. Yeah. So if we go to the avatar one right now, I think it's avatar like the real time in batch are both NA per minute because I think they're free. It I don't think they usually charge you in preview because their hope is that you will give them feedback to make it better. So that's how they kind of get you in. If like, hey, use our service for free, and then we also hope that you'll give us feedback to make the product better, and then you'll use it still once it's. And then you see the bill and pass out. Yeah, that's. But I think text to speech and speech to text has been GA'd for a while. So a lot of the main stuff we showed today is real out there, ready to be used in production. I think it. Yeah, there is a lot of APIs. So there's SDKs, but I think there's a lot of the SDKs just wire into APIs as it is. There is a high level, they changed the name on me like last week. There's like an AI umbrella. I think it's used to be called cognitive services. Now it's something else, but there's like an AI umbrella that has language services. Oh, what are the other three? I think it's the vision services, and there's like two other under the AI umbrella. They all just kind of live there. And you use that API key to then hit a bunch of APIs so that you can do that to do text-to-text translation. That's where the Klingon example is going to come from. So you don't need to use the speech service to do text-to-text. There's just an API out there that you can go and hit and say, go translate this. There is AI in some of them. I'm doing air quotes for those of you online. It can determine what language it's coming in on, which is kind of cool. So you can theoretically build a universal translator, because then I can just live with whatever language is going to come in, use my document source, whatever that is, say, hey, I know my documents are all in English. Or we had a client that we asked for some documents of like their owner's manuals, and they were really weird about the English ones, but somebody immediately sent us a Spanish one. So we're like, cool, that's fine, we'll use it. So we built like basically a universal translator. We didn't know what the language coming in was. We knew it was going to be Spanish for what it was going to ask Azure OpenAI. We used RAG to then communicate with that Spanish document. Answer came back in Spanish, and then we translated it back to the origin language. And that takes like 30, 40 minutes to set up. So it's super cool, a quick POC to kind of demo how some AI services can be used. And then it also shows us how we can leverage multiple ones as well. So it's a cool, fun little thing. A lot of people can then start to extrapolate how cool it would be if we do all these other things, or if you're a company that's multi-regional or multinational, hey, I can now support, have more accessibility into my products that maybe I didn't before, of, real-time chatbots that I write maybe once, or have our document sources that are written in English, and then they can be spun out in any language that Azure supports, which, again, they support Klingon if you're doing text. So pretty much anything under the sun. I think there's 300 plus languages and dialects. So assuming you fall under there, you should be able to do from one language to another translation, text-wise, text-to-text. And then if you want to do speech-to-text, as long as you have the text, you could then do the other way. But it requires that Azure has that. You're going to go back to speech, that speech ready. But if there's no other questions, we can go ahead and wrap up. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.